What is fucking good? Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever the fuck you are. We're diving right into it with some ARM, right? We are flexing in the stock market, it kind of looks like. So, obviously, with the Nvidia split, with the Avgo split, with a million other things having happened, right now, ARM actually decided to break out. So, typically, general rule of thumb, whenever you get a head and shoulders, you get a left shoulder, head, right shoulder. The right shoulder from the head and shoulders, which is the bearish pattern to the downside, usually becomes the left shoulder for the inverse head and shoulders, right? Which is exactly what we saw here. So I realistically wanted a retest of this 154 for it to hold true, quote unquote true, but obviously the market will give you what it wants to give you and then continue from there, right? So we ended up absolutely ripping. I think on Friday in the morning, yeah, we got our little pump on in the morning. We ended up pushing way above and then coming right back down. So this was a big point of resistance at some point. Hopefully it turns to support here for us to continue higher. If we do decide to continue higher, I would just like to see some price action over 166.72. From 166.72, I would like to see around this 169.24, basically 170 area. Above that, 171.10. And then above 171.10, realistically 173 to 175, and then continuously try to push through all-time highs. If not, and we end up coming down here from this 163.85, you see where we bounced here. This is going to be a very important pivot for us. So this 158.32, anything below that, I think we do inevitably see that 154.50. Below that, that 150 level, and then that 145 level. So that's kind of exactly what I see for ARM and what you should be looking for also on ARM. This has been a big name that I've been slamming the table on recently as I saw this inverse head and shoulders set up, and we continue to tap this 180 once we ended up breaking out of it and rejecting in the same place that we rejected during Apple's event, actually, on which we ended up selling some contracts into, funnily enough. We ended up retesting it a multitude of times also, but above this 180 level is where we started to base and see some buyers step in, and we ended up seeing new all-time highs on Google. So this is previous all-time highs, basically exactly where we closed. If we end up, continuously breaking down, look for 182.08 and then that 180 again. This 180 needs to hold, in my opinion. Otherwise, we should see around this 176. I would assume that this break of this 180 would take us there relatively quickly. So everything is basically set up on the chart for how I would want to play it, except for the upside. So realistically, what I would like to see is a break above 184.75, so 185, which would then push us into this big resistance zone of this 185 area, right? This 185 to 186.38. So we need to clear this level if we want to continue to all-time highs, in which I do think that we see if we do end up breaking and obviously possibly closing above this 186, right? But other than that, I mean, straightforward, simple idea for Google. So, as if we did not think this fucking company could get any bigger, there was some recent news that broke out about them opening theme parks, right? They're opening two theme parks. One's in Pennsylvania, the other one is honestly, I can't remember. But even with the stock being up here at all time highs, just hanging out, we have another inverse head and shoulders setup. This pattern again is extremely bullish, especially if we end up holding around this area, right? We should end up seeing a pushback into the 683, and then from the 683, we should inevitably see that 700, in my opinion. So that's realistically, again, I always say that fucking word, dude. I need to find a different word. That's what I see though. Is a bounce here into the 683, the 683 above. Obviously we have a ton of resistance around this area, right? The 687. So once we break and close over 680, I think we end up seeing that 700 level. Now, if it doesn't play out right and the market ends up showing some weakness, then I would like to see us drop back down to this area right here, this 671. So we could just call it 670. This area right here will be extremely pivotal for us as it's a psych level, right? And again, because we're trading up here at all-time highs, or rather around all-time highs, we should see some buyers step in. If not, then I would like to see this 665. This 665 breaks. I mean, again, this was a point of all-time highs, right? So if we end up seeing this break, we should see 662.35 from 662.35, 658.40, and then the 656 level. So that's really all that I see for Netflix. Next up, we are looking at the crypto giant that is Coinbase, right? Obviously, Bitcoin was consolidating for an extremely long period of time, trying to break through all time highs, and just did not happen. We ended up seeing some more downside. We're back in like the 60K area, I think, currently, as I'm recording this. And Coin definitely looks a little appetizing here, right? So real quick, we were also in an inverse head and shoulder setup here, right? Just talking about Netflix, and when things don't work out in the way that they should, we end up seeing some relatively healthy downside, right? So we ended up getting our left shoulder, our head. I guess technically this would have been the right shoulder. We got some follow through, but when we ended up coming back down through this area where the neck previously was, we saw some very heavy downside. We ended up seeing this 207 level just from this simple break of this 234.17, right? So we're on a relatively healthy trend here. You know, crypto again is not doing too hot. I don't even want to use that as the way to describe it. I mean, it's not that it's doing terrible or anything crazy, but it could be doing better. Let's just say that. So I see a current downtrend breakout, and we're also on an uptrend. We would just have to break above this area here, which would be this 228 level, basically 230. If we could close over 230, I think we could continue to this 240. As mentioned in previous videos, this 240 was a big support at some point. When it broke, ended up turning into a big resistance, right? So that's really all I'd like to see, is a move back towards this 240 from here. If not, then this 215 level is our line in the sand for potentially a 205 retest and then a 200 retest. So that's really all that I'm seeing on Coinbase given the current crypto market. The ETF that has been on everybody's fucking mind ever since Nvidia decided to take off, SMCI decided to take off, Avgo decided to take off, Microsoft decided to take off. Every single massive name in tech pushed us up here, right? We saw this massive move on QQQ. And this move happened beginning of June, or like mid-June, I guess, to push us, 20 points higher. So we ended up obviously rejecting. We saw some profit taking, and now here we are. I currently would just like for this 478.22 to hold. This does not hold. This is going to be one of the easiest trades. We should see that 475. That's really what I'd like to see. If we don't see 475, 476.19 would be a good target. And also this 477.08 would also be a good target. But if this 478.22 breaks, I would really like to see this 475.40 level. And then possibly a bounce after that. But who knows what happens, right? But that's what I'd like to see for the downside. Now for the upside, a break back over 480 should take us into 481.07. Just right. Yeah, this should be a good level. 481.07. And then from 481.07, possibly, I mean, this is a really good level too. This 482.50 to that 483.43, then 484.34. This would be relatively healthy for us to bounce from. And we kind of do need this bounce all across tech. So that's simply what I see for QQQ. Either a revisit of this 475.40 or this 484.34 level. And then above that, 486 and then all-time highs to 500. Next, we are looking at Softy, Mr. Microsoft, which has been trending ridiculously high, continuously breaking all expectations and pushing to all-time highs, right? We ended up seeing some big pullback, but this is really where we need to bounce, right? I mean, this 447.20 is a level that I've had. Just it looks like a line of confidence, right? You see, if we break down through it, we end up coming down really hard. We break up through it, we go up really hard. When we consolidate at it, we end up pushing higher. So I'd love to see a bounce here. If not, then this 443 should be in play, and it should be relatively simple to the downside. If we don't end up seeing that 443, but we do see downside, look for a bounce at this 445 area, as Microsoft kind of likes to do random shit like that. If we do bounce here, possibly pushing up into this 448.60, this 448.60 to this 449. 449, obviously 450 is going to be a big level for us to break through, as it's a massive psych level. Also a point of confidence, right? You see that we reject a lot here. And then when we do end up breaking above, we break up really hard. And then when we come back down through it, we end up coming back down through it really hard. So really, Microsoft could see 443.45 or 445. Or it could see this 450 area pushing up into this 452. That's as simple as it gets, honestly. Looks like it'll be a really good trade for this upcoming week.